Two of my favorite things in the world are video games and metal. Obviously, I got my battle vest, my Mastodon shirt, my pentagram necklace on. I'd say I'm all set. And I was thinking, man, what are some of the most metal albums in gaming? There's a lot of good ones out there, but I want to talk about some of my favorites. Now, the first two that come to mind for me personally are no-brainers: Doom and Brutal Legend. Brutal Legend has a phenomenal soundtrack, by the way. It's got everything from Motorhead, Slayer, Children of Bodom, some other ones in there. And there's some bands in there that you've probably not heard of. It's not just all the big names in metal, which is something I was really happy with because, I'm always interested in being turned on to new music because metal is amazing. And that saying that metal past the year 1986 has just not been the same. Shut up. Yes, it has. It's been good. It's been consistent. You just gotta dig. You can't just turn on the radio and expect to find good metal. Maybe you think it is, but in my personal opinion, you gotta do a lot of digging, which is totally okay with me because there's tons of great metal bands out there that you should all be listening to. But yeah, Brutal Legend, that was one of the best examples of metal in video games that I could think of. Actually, that whole game is just great. It's like a hack and slash adventure game. It's on the 360. It's on Steam. If you haven't picked it up, I highly recommend doing so. Especially if you're a metalhead. There's a lot of great jokes in there that you'll definitely like and appreciate. Especially when it comes to the hair metal scene in there. It's such a great game. It's hard for me to explain because I would rather have you play it for yourself and figure it out, or go through it and get all the jokes. But one thing I will say though, I think Ozzy Osbourne makes an appearance in the game, and that was always one thing I thought was really cool, is to see the Prince of Darkness in a video game. But the second game I'm going to talk about is Doom. Now, obviously, everyone knows about Doom and the story of Doom. But personally, I remember loading up Doom for the very first time on the Xbox Live Arcade, and I heard E1M1, and it's got that awesome No Remorse track. Well, it's the lo-fi rendition of No Remorse from Metallica, and I was like, this is awesome. And that's still probably one of my favorite video game songs of all time. You could argue that doesn't count because it was already a song, but I love that song so much. And there's tons of stuff inspired by Metallica, Judas Priest, Slayer, Pantera. If you want to know more about that, check out my Doom 3 review that I did a little while back. But man, that is one of my favorite soundtracks in gaming as well because it has a good balance of thrash and kind of creepy music. I always think of the track Suspense on Mission 5. That was always one of my favorites. But after that, it goes right back to the thrash metal. It's got a good balance of it, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. Now, Doom, the most recent Doom 2016, I thought that was a good soundtrack as well. I really wish they went for a little more traditional heavy metal style, or a more traditional thrash style. Instead, it's very... I don't know if digital is the right word for it, but there's synthesizers, and not the kind of cool synthesizers. It's one of those deals where I actually prefer to hear it while I'm playing the game than when I'm not. Because when I'm not, I'm just it kind of annoys me, and that depresses me because Mick Gordon, the composer of Doom 2016, has a phenomenal track record, and I love all his stuff from Wolfenstein and some of his other projects. But that was one I was like, it's good. I kind of prefer just the older sort of thrash influence to it. This has a little more of a deathcore, not total inspiration, but you could definitely hear a little more deathcore than thrash, and that kind of bothered me, especially when I'm just listening to it by itself. But it's something that you can get over while playing the game. Now third game I'm talking about. Now the third game I want to say, Guilty Gear. Okay, Guilty Gear is an anime-inspired fighting game series, and one of the best in my opinion. I recently just got into it, and my god, that soundtrack is so awesome. I'm serious, man. Go onto YouTube and listen to some of these tracks. They're headbanging goodness. In fact, I find it hard to even concentrate on playing the game because the music is so awesome. The gameplay in Guilty Gear is so great. It's so awesome. I mean, like when it comes to fighting games, I've always leaned towards more like Street Fighter than Mortal Kombat. I personally hate button blocking. It's just awful. I don't understand why I can't ever get into it. But Guilty Gear is like right there with Street Fighter for me. And some of the other ones, like Blaze Blue is another one. Those are all just phenomenal fighting games. But Guilty Gear has it's always had like an excellent metal soundtrack ever since the very beginning on the original PlayStation. Let's see, like Soul Bad Guy's theme is really sweet. Kai Kist's theme is really awesome. I really like Elfelt's theme from Guilty Gear XRD Sign. I know it's the third Guilty Gear X game. I just don't know how to say it properly, so I'm just gonna say it like that. And yeah, that's one of those tracks where, like, whenever I hear it, I just start doing a windmill. You know what I mean? Now, the last game is FZero X. Now, if you're a fan of FZero, you might be like, really? One of the most metal soundtracks in gaming? Yes. And I remember, the original soundtrack on the N64 it's fantastic. There's the Guitar Range soundtrack, which is also just as good. But man, I love that N64 soundtrack so much. It's just awesome. It's one of my favorite racing games of all time. It may even be my favorite racing series. Like Wipeout is awesome if you haven't played that. But like F-Zero, I love. Both of those franchises are awesome. But F-Zero has, in my opinion, a better soundtrack. I don't hate like electrical or what's the word for it? Kind of like disco. It's not really disco. No, that's not right at all. That's a totally different genre. But it's got kind of like that electric sound to it in Wipeout, which aren't bad. I love hearing the F-Zero, like hearing like Mute City is just awesome. Well, that's about it. I mean, that's at least it for this episode. I could talk metal for hours, but I'm short on time today. So I just wanted to make something a little bit different and just talk about some metal in video games, because these are all tracks and albums that you should be listening to. Believe me, it's headbanging goodness. So, that'll do it.